Hey, everybody, welcome back to You Are What You Love. I'm so happy to have you again. My guest today is Lauren Passell, and she is the co founder of Tink Media. And also, I just said that I went through this three
It's
times.
okay.
And my guest today is Lauren Passell. She is the founder of Tink Media, and she also writes an amazing newsletter that you should absolutely go check out called Podcast the Newsletter. If you're listening to this, you listen to podcasts, and so you need Lauren to curate some of the best ones out there for you. Welcome to the show, Lauren.
Thanks, Marissa. I am so excited to be here. And you could say I'm the co-founder if you think about it, because I co-founded the company with Tinkerbell. That's why it's called Tink. I love Tinkerbell. She is kind of bitchy and magical, and I look to be like her every day. So co-founder with Tink.
I love that. Co-founder of Tink with Tink. Well, I think we have a kind of a fun split today. We're talking about two things. What piece of media are we talking about that was so influential for you today?
Well, when I think about influence, I think about Calvin and Hobbes, the comic strip by Bill Watterson. So I'm excited to talk about that. But when it comes to fandom, I'm a huge Disney fan, obviously, as you know from hearing me talk for 5 seconds. But Tinkerbell and Peter Pan and The Little Mermaid and Disney is my fandom that I feel in my bones, that I get teased for, that I make part of my identity, that shapes how I make my way through my day as an adult. So I think they're kind of like two different aspects of my idea of fandom and what makes me who I am.
I love that. I love a kind of split of that question. One of my favorite things about this show so far has been seeing how people respond to the prompt. What piece of media changed who you are as a person? And I love that your instinct was to say there's one that influenced me as a creator and a person as a creative and learning how to deal with story and those types of things like we've talked about, and another side of you that says this is what I love, just unconditionally nerdy and willing to say out there. So that's a fun split, and I'm excited to get into it. um I think we should get into Calvin and Hobbes first, because I think that is kind of about who you are as a professional, as a person. So what was the first kind of memory you have of experiencing or reading Calvin and Hobbes? How did you find it?
Well, sometimes you have memories you're not sure they're real. And like you're like, did that really happen? Or am I making this up in my brain? But I remember um, seeing a strip about Calvin Ball. Calvin used to play Calvin Ball with Hobbes, and in case you don't know, like Calvin is a little boy who has an imagination and a stuffed tiger. And it's about his journeys with his stuffed tiger who comes to life with him and goes on all these adventures. And he used to play Calvin Ball, he didn't have anyone to play with. It was him and his imaginary tiger. And Calvin Ball had no rules. It used whatever tools or sports equipment were lying around. No one could really play Calvin Ball. And I remember thinking, that is so cool. That was what hooked me. And I'm pretty sure my parents started noticing that I was enjoying reading them in the paper. And like I wanted them to, and then they started buying me the books. And then I read the books over and over again. Bill Watterson is actually from the town I'm from in Ohio, Hudson, Ohio. And
Oh, wow.
I think it was pretty well known that he didn't want to license anything.
Okay.
So like I couldn't become the fan I wanted to be. I couldn't have Calvin and Hobbes sheets and a Calvin and Hobbes toothbrush. Those were not available. And he didn't want there to be a Hobbes doll. So I made my mom buy me a tiger, and it did not look like Hobbes, but it was my tiger. And I would bring him to parties and kind of made up my own adventures with my Hobbes.
I love that. So it feels like the thing that really hooked you is this idea of imagination and lack of boundaries. Like there's a lack of rules in this idea of Calvin Ball.
Yes. I don't know if I ever thought of it like that until you just said that. Yeah. Is this a therapy session
Yeah,
for
I know,
me?
not to I am not a licensed therapist. I must put that out there.
Oh
No,
man.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just as you were talking about it, it sounds very um it's very cool, because I think even in the idea of not being able to buy a Hobbs doll, in that lack of boundaries or lack of rules. You just said, "Well, I'll get my own. I'll make my own." Do you feel like that kind of piece of Calvin and Hobbes stuck with you in terms of how you've moved forward, being kind of a business owner and entrepreneur?
Yeah, I guess I think, well, one thing is I'm an only child like Calvin was.
Mm,
And I think I identified with him in that way. So I think something that's shaped me is being alone, doing things by yourself, being independent. And I'm not a real big rule breaker. I get nervous about breaking the rules. Um, but I guess you could say the way that, maybe not rule breaking, but thinking about something in a new way or doing something not the way everyone else is doing it has shaped my life. I dressed differently than everybody my whole life. Like I can remember one time my mom said, "Don't you want to wear what the other girls are wearing?" And because I think she thought I was like getting made fun of. And I was like, I don't care. I didn't care about getting made fun of.
yeah.
And I think I had this sense of self. Like, and I think honestly, it's from seeing Calvin's sense of self and being able to not need anyone, to be able to create your own fun, you know?
Mm,
And I was alone a lot, and my parents would bring me to their parties, and I'd be the only kid there, and I had my doll, and I think that did help me, like, I didn't listen to others, I didn't give in to peer pressure. If
mhm.
somebody was trying to get me to do something, I would do the opposite, which isn't always good, but I was very, I didn't I got made fun of and I didn't care, and I feel like it's because I knew who I was, and I think Calvin taught me who I was.
Do you remember kind of how old you were or what was going on in your life when you first started kind of reading that comic?
I mean, I think it intersects at this weird age where I I feel like 8 is when I started reading Calvin and Hobbes. And I
Okay.
think 8 is, first of all, an age where kids kind of stop being all friends with each other. That's my memory of it. When
Yeah.
you don't, your birthday party, you don't have to invite all the kids over. It's kind of like you start making tribes.
Mm,
And maybe because I was so like Calvin and I was very weird and by myself and I didn't really have a lot of friends. And I feel like instead of like leaning in and thinking I'm going to join the gang, I leaned into myself and said, I'm going to, not worry about the other people and worry about myself instead.
yeah.
And I also think 8 years old is a weird age for girls, particularly. I feel like all the 8-year-old girls I know are like, they want to be vets, they want to be the president, they want to, be doctors. And they have all these big, Lisa Simpson was eternally 8 years old, like
Yeah.
the world seems endless for them with endless opportunity. And the world isn't as nice to them later on, so the
Yeah.
girls that say, like, what did you want to be when you were 8? Do you remember?
When I was 8? Oh, that's such a good question. Let's see, 8 is is that 2nd grade? 1st
Yeah.
grade? Somewhere around there?
Uh-huh.
When I was 8, I think I had actually, this is gonna sound so crazy, but I think I'd actually already settled on, computer programming, which is my, big twist. Um yeah, I that's what I was gonna do through high school. I ended up taking a gap year working in software and then was like, I don't think so." Yeah, I think because I had a computer from a young age and started messing around with things and just remember kind of feeling it. I wish I had, like, those fun memories of being like, "I wanted to be a firefighter," or
But I think that's pretty cool. Like, that's a
Yeah,
very cool thing to wanna be when you're 8. But
yeah.
I
Yeah,
was
it
just
was a
a
weird
magical
year.
age. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. I do believe there's something magical about that age.
I think the idea of that tribe splitting with young girls at that time is so real. Um, and I kind of love the idea that that's sort of when you do have to decide whether you want to be focused on being yourself or whether you want to be focused on fitting in to some degree. Um, And there's something kinda, like, terrible and magical about that too, and I don't know if that's the same for eight-year-old boys, or if it's a different situation at that point, but I do remember that being kind of around the time where, yeah, you didn't have to invite everyone to your birthday party. Like, it went away from that, it went out in the class email and everybody had to go, and that's the first year that, like, maybe you don't get invited to someone else's versus, like, the freedom of not having to invite that girl you hate. I also do wonder if maybe at that point is when children start to become mean. Like, I think that's when you start to realize that you can do that there's social dynamics that can be had,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
And that you can have power. I
Mm,
think that's what makes us little girls mean sometimes when they can
yeah.
see that they can hurt others. And but I just didn't care. When I was in 5th grade, this just shows who I was. Like, I didn't have any friends once again, and we had a unit on journalism, and
Mm,
I was like, I'm gonna ask my teacher if I can bring in the movie Newsies. And this is gonna be great. And for some reason, she let us watch it. Okay, now this makes no
okay.
sense. You don't learn anything about journalism by watching
From
Newsies.
Newsies?
Whatever. She let us watch it, and I was like, "Man, everyone's gonna love me for this. You're welcome, guys." Melissa Frontino, you do not need to bleep that out. Calling her out 30 years later, she came up to me and was like, "Thanks a lot for ruining my life. I hate Newsies." And I
Ruining
remember it
my
was in
life.
front of everyone. I'll never forget this. And I said to her, "Oh, yeah? Well, I'm going home and I'm making nachos with my mom." And I spun around and walked away. And you know what? I thought I owned her at that point. And now it wasn't until many years later that I was like, "Oh, that was the nerdiest thing you could have said." She was probably laughing at you. I didn't care. I thought, "Oh,
Oh,
I got
that's
my own
so
stuff.
funny.
I have nachos and my mom, and like, I don't need this."
I love that though. Like, that's such a nice perspective to have had, because I don't think I know anyone who was that confident in themselves at that age, especially in the 5th grade.
But I think I can attribute it to Calvin, honest to God, because I was in his world. When I was in 4th grade, so one thing, I don't know how familiar your listeners are with Calvin and Hobbes. Um, he used to write on top of his paper, Calvin, Boy of Destiny. I used to write on the top of my papers, Lauren, Girl of Destiny. And I would get in trouble
Wow.
for it. I mean, I was ripping him off completely. Like, I
Yeah.
just wanted to be him. I wanted to be him.
Did your parents kind of, it sounds like your mom was very supportive of kind of every big dream that you may have had, in buying the tiger and buying more of the comics and the books, and did you find that when you came home and told her things that were happening, she was just as supportive, or did she ever sort of try to steer you out of that?
I think they loved that I didn't care about other people. I remember my mom taught me I remember she taught me how to roll my eyes. She was like, "Someone's mean to you, do this with your eyes." And she rolled her eyes and she taught me how to do it. And that she's like, "That's all you do." And thinking back, like, I don't think Melissa Frontino or those little girls that were mean even noticed that I was rolling my eyes, but I did. It was my
Yeah.
power, you know?
Yeah. I love that. So I think your mom and Calvin are the heroes of this story.
My
Uh,
mom too. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. That's
And
lovely.
and she would be the one that was like, when I was like, "Mom, I want to play Calvin ball," she would be like, "Okay, let's go get all the stuff," or like,
Yeah.
um, "I want to write a book." I wrote fan fiction kind of about
Oh,
Calvin, but it was a girl named Eris.
okay.
And so she was the one that helped me with my writing, like set up the computer to write my fan fiction. And like she supported me in all of bought me the books and.
Yeah. Oh, but I really love that. I think there's something really nice um about it being more about your confidence and your sense of self, and then leading you to who you became, maybe in a way that you didn't even realize until later.
Yeah, I think I said to you, Calvin, shaped who I was, but maybe it doesn't impact me so much as an adult. But I think I was wrong when I said that. I think now that I think about it, I think he did shape who I am as an adult.
Yeah. Well, it also sounds like maybe that same piece of who you are in confidence from that Calvin experience is also why you're so unabashedly in love with Disney, to some degree.
You're good. You're right, because people make fun of me for my love of Disney, and I do not care.
Yeah. Well, so how did you get into Disney? How did that switch come from? Where did that switch
Well,
come
I
from, I
mean,
suppose?
I guess part of it was like I wasn't a huge Disney fan when I was little. I was a normal Disney fan. I loved The Little Mermaid. It came out when I was 5. I was obsessed, but and I went to Disney World when I was 5. But I
Okay.
remember we didn't have a lot of money. It wasn't like a big, it was like all my parents could afford. And I remember thinking, this is my Disney trip that everyone gets to go once and I'll probably never go again. And I don't think I went again till I was 14. And that's when I started going every year, and probably every year since I was 14, and I'm 38. I have gone, I mean, and before COVID, multiple times a year. And um, I had an annual pass. It's something my mom and I do together. It's another bonding thing with my mom. Sometimes we let my husband and my dad come, but there's always this. It's an experience that we share together. And then a couple of years ago, we started going on the Disney cruise once a year.
Okay.
So we tacked that on. But really, I just feel like as I started going back, I started wanting to know more about the Disney movies, the history, appreciating the Imagineers, like the architecture of the park, everything.
Yeah.
So really appreciating all that as more than
Yeah.
just like VHS tapes that I watched at home. Really loving and realizing how happy it made me. My mom and I used to say, well, my cousin, we brought my little cousin one time and we got him all excited.
Yeah.
And he said, I think I have a fever. I think I have a Disney fever. And my mom and
Oh.
I looked at each other and we thought, I have that too. I get feverish when I think about it, when I know I'm going. And I still do. We
Yeah.
still talk about the Disney fever.
I I really love that because when we first talked about setting this up, I was like, Disney, Disney, Disney. Like, I get made fun of for how much I love Disneyland. But I've realized, and I think it's interesting because it sounds like it was the same age for both of us. One of my first like core memories is going to Disney World. And my dad took me. It was when I was still my little sister hadn't been born yet, and the two of us went, and I just remember having the time of my life, because I went and I had been obsessed with Disney movies at that age. I told you this offline, but I'm gonna repeat it for our listeners. But my dad traveled a lot when I was a kid for work, and he had this van that had a TV and you could play VHSs. So I've always like watched a ton of movies because I used to travel with him before I went to preschool. And so at that point I had already become very obsessed with The Little Mermaid and Winnie the Pooh. Those were the two like core things for me. I loved all the princesses. Who doesn't love a little Disney magic? But Ariel was this like huge thing. And then my dad has still um extreme stress when you play Winnie the Pooh because I used to watch Winnie the Pooh's Grand Adventure on loop. I would make him rewind the tape and play it again. But I would cry every single time. So I would uh, have a meltdown in the back seat, and then I would, obviously everything ends up being happening happy, but when Christopher Robin was growing up, that's when I would start having a meltdown. Um and then my dad would say I would say, "Can you play it again?" And he would say, I'm not gonna play it again. You're gonna cry, and I just don't wanna deal with it." And I was like, "I promise I'm not gonna cry. I promise I won't cry. Just please play it again." And then I would try to hold back my tears in the back seat because I would start crying again. Um, and I would cry
Oh,
again.
that sounds so cathartic. I was about to ask, how many times has your dad seen The Little
Yeah.
Mermaid or heard The Little Mermaid? But do you think it's interesting? Because I feel like that trip with your dad must have been special too, because it was just you and him. And that's special. But also, I wonder if, do you think one reason you love The Little Mermaid is because it's about a girl and her father? Like,
Oh,
is
that's
that what
deep.
got you so emotional about it? Like,
Okay, I guess it's therapy for me today too. I don't know. I think I don't know why I connected with the movie in the first place so deeply, but I do know that one of the stories my dad has told me is he bought me one of those the little autograph books that you can get when you go.
mm-hmm.
So he had gotten me one, probably offhandedly thought like this is what you do when you take your kid to Disney World.
Yeah.
Um and so he got me the autograph book, and apparently my adamant thing is I wanted to stand in line to meet all of the characters. And we would be in line for like 3 hours, and I was just not a patient child usually, but apparently during these lines, especially with Ariel, I was fine. My dad was like, "Do you want to go ride rides? Do you want to go do?" I was like, "No, I want to stand here and I want to meet Ariel. She is waiting for me." And and I have to go through. And when I met Ariel, I got to the front and I sat down with her and I could not write. I was a child that did not understand English, but I opened my autograph book and I had written, in quotes, I suppose, air quotes, I had written down questions. I had so many questions for her. And so
Get out.
so I opened my autograph book. I sat, got up on her lap, sat down, and I was like, "Look, I have a lot of questions. Namely, how do you
Oh.
brush your hair underwater?"
Good question.
Yeah, so I think, and apparently I asked a number of questions and she sat there and answered all of them in character. And then it was my time, like they didn't rush you out. It was just a lovely experience. And then I was like, okay, time to continue on and meet my next movie star, basically. Cause when you're that young, like you're like, these are the people I've been watching 400 times on loop. Um, but yeah, it leads me to believe that I watched that movie and questioned sort of the science of it all. He's like, "How did she get your voice? How did you brush your hair underwater?" Like, and then having some of those the actors who play those Disney characters are just the cream of the crop in terms of how they treat kids. And I think I just sat down and that's like it's probably the equivalent of, my dad meeting Al Pacino and getting to sit down and ask 1,000 questions and Al Pacino just genuinely answering them. And I think that's what hooked me overall. It has to be.
I have
Um,
tears in my eyes.
oh.
'Cause that wow, when people, you know, speak negatively about Disney World, first of all, it's so easy to do that. I get so tired of it. It's so easy to make fun of it.
Yeah.
But you thought that was real. How cool is that? Like,
Yeah.
what magic? And I would want every kid to have that kind of magic. I don't like I remember when I was 5, the Pirates of the Caribbean, that ride.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. And, in case you don't, you get on a boat, a big boat, and, it's in the dark, and the whole premise is that you're going into a Spanish town, and the Spanish town is being ransacked by a bunch of pirates,
Right.
and when you go into the ride, you go down this little dip, and then you see the side of the town. You're coming to the side of the town, and you see a ship coming in, the pirate ship coming in from the sea, and I
Mhm.
remember thinking, how did they get the ocean in this room? I remember thinking that. And I was so confused and so excited. And how awesome that I thought that the ocean was in that room.
Yeah.
They did
Yeah.
that. They did that. They do things so well. They bring so much magic. They make kids able to think about the world in a magical way that I think makes them different adults.
I absolutely agree with you, and I think there's something I really love that would you say it was your nephew, your cousin,
My cousin.
your cousin. So your cousin saying I have Disney fever. Like something about that is just so accurate. Um and I'm sure there's, one kid in the world that's been to Disney World and was like I don't want to be here, but I think it's just something so genuinely magical and it's so easy to kind of hate on it and it's so easy to call it cheesy. Um but it's something so beautiful. Like if you look at a kid at Disneyland, just any kid that if just down the street, they're having the time of their life. They're having the
Yeah.
absolute time of their life.
And you see dads doing things they would never do in public
Oh
back at
yeah.
home, like wearing goofy hats and
Yeah.
everybody becomes a kid. But what do you think? Because still need a good answer for this. Because people
Okay.
say that Disney princesses ruin little girls, and they're not. Those movies give girls unrealistic ideas about love, and I get angry, and I don't have a good comeback. Do people
Hmm.
say that to you? And do you have a comeback?
So for me, I think Mm, ha I guess I've never had that, argument with people because I've never really viewed the Disney movies to be about romance, even though they all are. They're all love stories and they all have, a prince and a princess and that's kinda how it goes. But every single one of the stories to me has a young woman who has some sort of crisis or thing that she has to overcome, and I've always kinda thought, like, yeah, like, the prince at the end is, like, a nice reward for doing what you did, but The Little Mermaid is about Ariel wanting to be outside of the world that she's in and her family kind of holding her back, and her wanting to move forward, and yeah, she gets Prince Eric in the end, but she has to go through kind of all of these personal choices, and I think people I can see the argument of, well, she's making those choices because she wants to be with a guy, but it's not really that. She hasn't talked to him. She sings part of your world, and it's about wanting to be with the other people, wanting to be with people like her. She doesn't feel like she fits in, um, and she feels like she might there because she connects with those different things that are curious to her, and I think she takes a risk and ultimately it pays off. Um, and Prince Eric is like the hot trophy at the
I
end.
love I'm so stealing this because you're right. It's like the people that say that, it's like, "Oh, so you were only focused on that one part
Yeah,
that was thrown in." And like, I mean, to me, The Little Mermaid, I still cry at that scene where she's leaving her dad. And I think because when I was little, I thought, I can't imagine leaving my dad. And I had to leave my dad when I got older. And I was sad to do that, you know? So like you're right. It's um there's so much else. There's so many other parts to the stories than that. And I always think like I didn't believe that that was how I should find a partner. You know, I
mhm,
wasn't like I didn't think that that was I wasn't waiting for my Prince Charming, you know, and I
yeah,
think we have to give kids more credit. I don't think kids are looking I was not watching that movie and thinking I need to look like that. I
right.
wasn't. And I think adults think that kids are doing that, and I don't think they are. I think we have to give kids more credit that they're taking in the story and thinking about it creatively and just wanting to be part of an imaginative world.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's certain things for representation that have definitely gotten better and bigger, and, like, I love that little girls have Princess Tiana now and
Oh, yeah.
have, there are different ways of, yes, there are certainly ways to make these princesses more inclusive and more representative and let these little girls see themselves on screen, but I do think that the romance part is not it's just not the most important part. Like, none of the songs that you remember are about it's like never the love song, you know? It's about like part of your world is about being with human beings, being an adult, wanting to grow up.
Kiss
Um,
the Girl is pretty good.
Kiss the Girl is pretty good. It's a good song. I take
But
it back.
that's but but that is because every song in that soundtrack is amazing. I even love Fathoms Below, where this
Mm,
I listen to that while I am preparing my lunch. Like all the music on that soundtrack is amazing.
yeah. Oh, and Poor Unfortunate Souls as well. What a
Mm,
great, what a great movie. But
yeah.
but yeah, I think it is about I think every movie tells you something about yourself, and I don't think I guess also, like, when you go to Disneyland, no one's like, "Oh, I can't wait to," there's no five-year-old who's like, "Oh, I can't wait to put it on Prince Eric." You know what I mean? It's it's,
I
"Man, I can't
know.
wait to talk to Ariel," or, "Man, I can't wait to talk to Belle." Like,
I
it's
know.
yeah. I think it's more about, like, it's about the journey than it is the end, the prize.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. Um, so the first time you went to Disney World, you were 5, and your
Mhm.
family, it sounds like, made sacrifices to be able to kinda take you.
Yeah, I remember we went in February because that's not an expensive time. I had to miss school. My kindergarten teacher didn't like that
Oh.
very much. And we stayed far away from the park and
Yeah.
I didn't care. And we also I told you I was alone a lot. I was an only child and my parents had two friends, Anne and
Mhm.
Tom. So it was Anne, Tom, my mom, my dad, and me. So I was like the fifth wheel and,
Oh,
someone would always have to like the 3 people would go off, and then 1 person would be in charge of doing kid stuff with me.
okay.
But I remember my parents never, like there was no kids table, there was no, "We're getting a babysitter." They brought me to adult movies, like, they just brought me wherever they went all my
Mhm.
entire life. And I remember so we would stay out late. I was 5 years old and we would stay out really, really late. We were in Orlando. We would be out in Orlando late. And
Oh,
my
wow,
parents
okay.
would be like, "Oh, she's gonna be so tired tomorrow morning. We better sleep in and let her get some sleep." And they said every single morning before everyone woke up, I would be blasting Gilligan's Island because I would wake up because I was on this high of being in Disney World. I was like, "Come on,
Yeah.
let's go. We have to go to the park." They're like, "You got 2.5 hours of sleep." And I'm like bouncing off the walls, like get blasting the Gilligan's Island, get out of bed. We are missing precious Disney time. Like
Yeah.
I am still like that. The
Yeah.
energy I have when I'm there.
Yeah, you seem like a rope drop girl. Are you gotta be there when they drop the rope to let you run or kind of thing?
Wow. Well, I mean, I was for a long time, but now I don't know. I don't know. How many times have you been to Disney World?
So Disney World, I've only been
or
twice.
land?
Disneyland, I've been quite a bit. I haven't been since COVID yet. So
Yeah,
that's my big hurdle to jump, I suppose. It still makes me a little nervous, but
me
um
too.
and also the prices have skyrocketed.
Mm. Yeah, I get a little sad, because, they have this, like, Disney Genie app where you get tickets for the rides, and I think, ah, what if your mom doesn't have a smartphone and
Yeah.
you really wanna go on something? It seems and also, I don't think we should all be staring at our phones while we're there, so
Yeah.
it makes me well, I've prepared myself to go back post-COVID. I haven't been yet back either, and,
Yeah.
I'm like, "Things are gonna be different," and the other thing is, they're changing things that I am very nostalgic about. And I think I have to keep on reminding myself, they have to change things so that my children and my children's children will like Disney just as much as I do. So we have to,
Mm,
they do a good job of keeping things, I think, for people that
yeah.
are really nostalgic, but also innovating. And I have to let go of some of those things.
Yeah.
But, um, but anyway, my mom and I go so much that I am no longer I'm very energetic, but I'm no longer like I used to be running to the lines and being the first person there. But now we will sometimes go and not even go on a single ride
Oh,
and
really?
walk around and people watch and maybe do Spaceship Earth or one special thing. But it's really about being there, being together, um, stumbling upon a random parade, seeing kids do the cutest things ever, having a
Yeah.
meal in a castle, it's just we kind of enjoy not planning too much. And
Yeah.
now when you go, you have to plan a lot if you want to hit things.
Yeah. Yeah, you absolutely do. It's so funny because I am the planner every time I go. I am the methodical person who's like, we need to be here for rope drop. We're going to this ride first, and then we're going here, and then we're going here, and we have fast passes here. And um I love the idea of just sort of like letting it overwhelm you and enjoy the space
I
and
think
enjoy
it's
the
a
time.
luxury though, because
Yeah.
if I do think about when I was a little girl, we couldn't have done that. It was like, this is your trip. You got to get in what you're going to
Mm,
get
yeah.
in. And there's a lot of families that have to, and that makes it extra stressful. I mean, I think I need to go with you. It sounds like you have it down.
I find myself always being the one with the plan, whether I want to or not, regardless of where we're going. That's just the type of I'm like the itinerary girl, I'm the map it out girl. This ride is gonna have the longest wait and actively breaks down throughout the trip. So if you go at the beginning, you'll actually get to ride it. Um One of my worst memories in the world is getting trapped on Splash Mountain. Um
Oh.
Inside the part where they're singing. So you're soaking wet.
Oh no. And they don't stop
They
singing.
don't
Oh
stop
my
singing.
gosh. Whew,
It is
that's
awful.
trauma. That's
Yeah, yeah, it's, deep, deep,
who
but ironically, I think I've been stuck on 2 rides in Disneyland. I got trapped on Splash Mountain as that happened, and that was with my uncle, who I love to death, and it was a family trip, and I just remember him saying, "Why did we get on this ride?" Just over and over again.
oh no.
But, like, something about that was so funny and silly,
Yeah.
and then I can't even remember, it might have been Splash Mountain again, but before you go down, but I got trapped on another ride, and I was on a date, and I
No, that
remember.
talk about a nightmare. That could be
Yeah.
bad.
It wasn't awful, it was just that I remember being upset that we ended up having to exit the ride, they didn't fix it, and you had to walk behind it, and you see the set, like, you actually see, it's not painted all the way. On the way back, it's just, it's metal bars, it's holding everything up, and I remember being devastated, like, as an I was in my 20s, so I was not, like, a child, but I just remember being like, oh, like, the magic is just there's, like,
Oh
that little bit
no.
of it scraped away."
Wow,
Um,
even as an
yeah.
adult. That's
Yeah,
I
even as an adult.
that would scar me. That would scar me.
Yeah.
Who's your what's your ideal Disney trip? Like, who do you go with? Do you have a set number of people that you like to go with? Is there someone special you like to go with? Are you one of those people that maybe has a couple drinks and says to everyone in the room, "Hey, why don't you come to Disney World with me?" Or Disneyland. What's your ideal visiting situation?
So, in terms of like my ideal group of people, I would say it varies. I would love to go with my dad again. I've not been back with my dad since I was a kid. I think he's probably over it by now, but I think we could have, like, a nice nostalgic time together if we went. Um, but my favorite trips have always been with, like, friends that I've been friends with for a really long time. I think the ideal number is 4 people because you don't have to worry about anybody not being able to sit together on rides. There's no anything like that. Unless you're going with someone who doesn't like rides, then I think it's good to have, like, an extra person in the mix. But my favorite trip of, like, adulthood was when I went for my birthday, and I went with a friend from high school, my younger sister, and 2 girls that I did improv comedy with, actually, at the time,
Oh my gosh.
and, for me, as th all that matters is that you go with people who commit to enjoying it. Like, I've been with people who don't wanna be there, that they're sort of like, "Oh, we're just here because, like, you want to go to Disney or it's so lame," or whatever. You have to go with people who want to be there and want to kind of just be a kid again. Because when we went for my birthday, we had, my friend made temporary tattoos of my face wearing Disney ears, like, wearing Mickey
No.
ears.
Oh, that's a good
So
friend.
everybody had, like, temp tattoos of my face with, Mickey ears on, like, all over. And then we Disney bounded. So I wore a Pizza Planet. I'm a big Toy Story kid, so I wore a Pizza Planet T-shirt, and then 2 of my friends dressed up like the aliens, like the alien situation. And so we have, like, all these wonderful pictures and, like, everyone just we got there as the gates opened, we had a plan, and so, anybody as long as everybody who's there really wants to be there, then it doesn't matter how many people you're with, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I agree with that.
What about you?
I mean, I've gotten to the point where I get nervous inviting people because I
Mm,
get so anxious that they're not going to have as I feel responsible for them.
mm,
And I wouldn't mind going with someone like you or someone on the Tink team. Anne is also obsessed with Disney.
okay.
Um, but if it's someone, especially if it's someone who's going for the first time and they're an adult or my age or even younger, a little younger than me, because I think you don't have nostalgia about this. I don't know if this is going to live up, and I will feel so, and I'm not going to enjoy myself.
If you're not
So
enjoying yourself, yeah.
I brought lots of people there, but
Mhm,
the funny thing about Anne, I'm talking about Anne, who's on the Tink team. I really needed help for my company, Tink.
mhm,
And I had been connected with Anne and I emailed them and I said, can we talk tomorrow?
mhm.
For let's to interview you kind of. And they were like, I can't talk tomorrow. I'm going to Disney World with my mom.
Oh,
And I was like, say no more. You sound qualified. No, not kidding.
you sound qualified.
I was like, that's all I need to know. I knew enough about them but this was like, oh, and
Yeah,
it's was a wonderful decision, by the way. Anne, it was amazing. It was the correct thing to do.
I love that. Oh, that's so fun. I do think as part of why I made this podcast, I do think you can learn everything you need to know about a person by what they love. Like, if you
Yes.
ask them what their favorite nerdy thing is, you'll know if you're gonna be a fit or not.
What if they don't have an answer? Do people ever say, I don't know?
I have had one person say, "I don't know," um, which was crazy, to me, but I think it was, I think most of the time people really do have, like, a core answer, and then as you talk through it, I think even just from the very beginning, like, my initial emails with people, I can always tell that what they've I think what you can always tell is that people are waiting to be asked that question and that they haven't been asked it, um
Mm.
and it's because in my opinion, it's because we are all so nervous to talk about that thing that does make people roll their eyes. Like, people are so nervous about, "If you get me going, I'm gonna talk for hours without your response." And I to me, I just think you learn so much about a person. Like, I just recently had a birthday and asked a bunch of my friends to go to this Star Wars bar that we have here in LA. Of course, everyone had an amazing time, but I look back on it and realize, like, even now I'm so nervous to be like, "Can we do this silly thing?" Um, and I do think it's because I am the type of person that someone, after I had had a couple of drinks, had asked me, "What's your favorite Marvel movie?" And I spoke for 45 minutes about it really depends on how you ask that question. Like, are you referring to the best one that did it's and then and I also, as I started answering the question, someone from across the room or across the bar said what they were like, "It's Iron Man." And I was like, "Well, it depends on how you ask, blah, 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 blah." And then I went on for 10 minutes and then finally said, "But yeah, it is Iron Man." So, I think people would love to be asked the question, but we've created this social space where it's nerve-wracking to talk about something in a way that you're just worried about being judged.
That's blowing my mind because when you were talking about that at first, I thought, well, I never worry about that when people, I will talk, but you're right. If you get, because in that story, you got too into it, you got into your
Yeah.
own world and kind of became unaware of your surroundings and that fear of letting go. And like,
Mm.
that actually is scary. I feel that fear of like, if you get me started, you might not be able to get me to stop. And that's going to be rude almost, like I don't,
Yeah.
I
Yeah, it feels rude.
yeah,
But then at the same time, I remember in that same instance, it was a friend and she had texted me the next morning and was like, "Had so much fun. Thanks for inviting me. Great to catch up." And I was like, so glad you came. So sorry for losing my mind about a very simple question." And she responded very, very wonderfully and basically was like, "No, it was just really lovely to get to hear you talk about something you're so passionate about."
yeah.
Um, and I think the right type of person that you're talking to wants to know that. Like it is sort of, bearing your soul. If you scratch the right answer and people or scratch the right question and people just really talk about it, you get to just learn so much about a person that way. Um,
And
and
you
I think
learn
there's
about
nothing
your
wrong with it.
friends too, like your
Yeah.
supportive friends. You're like, because
Yeah.
my friends are very supportive of my, they're the ones that are sending me Disney gifts if they see them or emailing me links to Disney things. And I had my bachelorette party on the Disney cruise ship and
Oh,
lots of them came. I made them go on a Disney cruise and many of
I
them
love
did.
that. I love that. But then I don't love that people didn't come. But
Oh, it's a big ask.
yeah.
It's a large ask. My feelings were not hurt if someone couldn't go on a Disney cruise in the middle of when it was in the middle of March.
Oh man, yeah, fair. So I do have a question for you that is the hot debate of my friend group right now. We're in our late 20s, and I asked this question at a friend's birthday party, and now we've continued to ask it. So I'm curious about your answer about it. Um, and I think I do know the answer, but I'm gonna ask you anyway. If it's more of a thought exercise, so you take out the ideas of, economics and finances and those types of things. But if you, met someone and they were saying they were ready to be a parent and they really wanted to have kids right now, but they did say that they couldn't imagine the idea of taking their child to Disneyland. They really didn't wanna do it. It just sounded like a nightmare. Do you think they're actually ready to be a parent?
Oh, I think you think I'm going to say they're not ready to be a parent. I mean, I think they're ready to be a very different kind of parent than what I would want
Mm,
and a very different kind of parent than I would want to be. I mean, I guess it's like, yeah, but it's so hard because if you can bring your kid and they really want to go and you're not willing, you're making me think about this and you're not willing to make a sacrifice.
Not
That's
even,
mm,
necessarily yeah, like a sacrifice, just not
to
financially, I
be
think is what
annoyed.
we've yeah, to be
Yeah,
annoyed, exactly.
that's such a good question. I think I've already changed my mind. Because it's a bigger question than that. It's like, are you willing to do something for your kid that, yeah, wow, but I don't, I think you're right. What do you think? What do you think?
So I'll give you an out. My answer has ultimately been no. I think that you're gonna have bigger problems than Disneyland if you're saying that. Because ultimately, when you talk to those people, the answer is always basically it happened. Someone said to me at a party, they were like, "Yeah, I would never take my kid to Disneyland." And they're one of those people that's ready to have kids, and I was like, why? And they said, well, like a kid's never gonna really understand it, even if I was like, well, we're talking about like a 5-year-old, not like an infant, it's
Right.
they are gonna remember it. And so the big thing is that their ultimate reason was, they didn't want the kid gets tired, the kid cries, the kid is gonna get upset. It's not worth the time to go. And to me, I just think you're gonna have the kid's gonna cry everywhere. You're gonna have the kid
Yeah.
get tired walking down the street to the mall. So,
This
um
is a very good question because it's not just about, I mean, it's about, are you willing to inconvenience yourself for,
mm,
for some, to give something magical to your child?
right.
What
Yeah.
do you think like the best age, if you were talking to friends who were like, we have a baby, we can't wait to take them to Disney World or
Mhm.
Disneyland, what age would you say to take them?
Oh, it's good. Um I think 4, like 3 or 4. I'm so not around kids, so I don't even know when children start being their own person. But to me, I assume, like, when you can walk and talk and show personality, I think you're consuming it enough to be able to do it. Like, I think if you are in a stroller the whole time, like, you actually can't walk for at all, like, you're crawling around, I think it's too young.
Yeah, that's true. And also the stroller. Yeah, because that's kind of an indication too. You don't want to be dragging a kid around, and that's why I think if you only have one trip, don't do it when the kid is too young because they're
Yeah.
not going to be able to have the endurance to get through a whole day. I think you need to work in breaks. You need to go
Yeah,
back to the hotel
absolutely.
pool.
Yeah, I do, but I do think, like, 4 or 5 is when you still have, like, the belief that these
Yes.
characters are you don't understand that it's a person in a suit, and I think that's the magical
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
Because then later, you have the whole Santa reveal, like, "Oh,
I
it's"
know.
so I think at that age is when it's perfect, to just overwhelmingly enjoy yourself.
Yes.
But yeah, I think also when like kids who have gone to Disneyland at a young age are just better people, in my opinion. Like you just sometimes you go through, they just
Yes.
experience joy in a different way. Like it's so much joy at such a you're so lis- you're such a it's such a small body and so much joy that's like burning out any sort of meanness that you can have.
Yes. And it's like it's like a shock of joy that kind of energizes you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think it's wonderful. Do you, I guess, if you are having kids or anything like that, do you have an age that you would take kids as a parent to Disney?
I think about this a lot with my husband because we are in the process of adopting a baby.
Oh,
And we're still it's an interesting process because we don't know how long we have.
yeah,
We probably
yeah.
have more than a year.
Okay.
And we don't know anything about this person.
Yeah.
But I think we go a lot. So I have a feeling that we would bring a baby
Like a
earlier than I would
baby.
advise other people to do because
Yeah.
my mom was going to come. We don't care if we go on everything. It's more like just being in the air. Sometimes I just
Yeah.
want to smell the fountain. And you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it would be a trip that wasn't a real hardcore Disney trip. But I
Yeah.
really do think there's not going to be uh, waiting because we're lucky. We go a lot. If
Yeah.
if there
Yeah.
was one trip, I mean, I was 5 and I thought that was perfect, but I think it could be a little younger. But I
Yeah.
think I would
Yeah.
definitely want to make sure that my child was there when they were 4 or 5 because that's
Yeah.
perfect.
I think yeah, I do. I think that is like that perfect age. Um, I think you're right. Cause I think I mean, that might just be the bias of we both went around that
Yeah,
time, but
that's
we're
true.
like, it's the right time.
Do everything like we did it.
Yes. Something I'm curious about because it seems like obviously you've had no trouble talking about it with me, and then you also did this amazing Disney marathon, which if it's okay with you, I'll link to the article if in the show notes. But I'm curious about how Disney may have played a hand in helping you get through your injury that you had, and if you want to talk about that at all.
Oh, completely. Like, I was training for the Disney marathon and I've been a runner for my whole life. My dad's a runner. My mom's a runner. And I had some pain in my hip and I just was like, I'm a pain ignorer. I actually had an MRI scheduled the next day and
Okay.
it hurt, but I was aware it was serious. But I was walking to work on the ice and I slipped and fell on the ice and my hip broke immediately the whole way
Oh my
through.
god.
And this guardian angel came and picked me up, a stranger, and did all this stuff, took me to the hospital and everything. But like they told me I wouldn't be able to run again. And I was like, that made me I don't know if this accident ever happened, if I would have been so determined to get back on my feet. And I
Mm,
trained and I did all my physical therapy. And 1 year later, I did the Disney half marathon and in a Tinkerbell costume and I won. And that was
mm,
very unexpected. It was almost freakish. I shouldn't
yeah.
have won. I mean, there were like competitive runners from all over the world. There was like 40,000 people. I remember when I started running, I was in 10th place and I was like, whoa, this is so cool. And I honestly think, there's things you can't explain.
Yeah.
I was on my turf. You go all throughout the parks. I was wearing a Tinkerbell costume. I felt like this was my moment, And the
Yeah.
funny thing is that race, people do take it very seriously. They come from all over the world. Most of the winners and the people in the top 10 are like wearing those tiny professional running shorts. And they're people that have done, won Boston and, like are
Yeah.
trying out for the Olympics and stuff. It's usually not someone wearing a Disney costume. Those are usually the dorks that don't do
Okay.
very well. And they're there for fun.
Yeah.
Everyone was so happy that a Disney fan won the race. And I feel like I had wings. I had a wand, a light up wand. Like
Oh,
I feel and I felt magical that day. This sounds, look at me. I'm getting ashamed of my
yeah,
dorkiness,
see?
right?
Yeah, it's I think it's such a great story. I think,
And
yeah.
And that's why I name my company Tink. I think she's given me magic. She
Yeah.
and taught me that I could do something I didn't think I could do.
I think I think something that's really lovely about that, and this might just be my inner Disney fan, is that Tinkerbell in particular is a character that needs people to believe in and talk about her to exist. And I think it's really
Yes.
lovely that you connect with that in a way that you're so happy to talk about Tinkerbell and kind of keep her alive in some
D
respects.
Does it also mean I'm a narcissist? I mean, I might be a narcissist. Like,
I
clap for me.
I don't think so. I think I don't know. I wonder if maybe it's more about sort of um putting magic into the world and being willing to give it back.
Oh, thank you for turning that around. Yes. No, that is what I like about her, that she is the magic. Like people,
Yeah.
she creates magic. This is a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's related. You can cut it out.
Yeah.
Um, do you remember the movie Dirty Dancing?
Of course.
Of course, I don't know you very well, but I know you well enough to know you remember Dirty Dancing. And
I went to film school. They make you.
okay, well, I don't know what your thoughts are about Dirty Dancing, but um, in Dirty Dancing, Baby is this amazing young woman and she wants to be a doctor and she's brilliant. And she has this sister named Lisa who is, we're supposed to think she's stupid and pointless and a waste of space. And I
Mhm.
remember there's this one line where Baby's dad says, Baby's going to change the world someday. And Baby goes, and Lisa's going to decorate it, as in like, LOL, like she's just here to decorate. And I remember being little and thinking, somebody has to decorate the world. And I remember thinking, that's
Yeah.
what I want to do. What's wrong with that?
That's really lovely. Oh man. I I don't remember that line, but now I have to rewatch it because
Oh,
I that's crazy. What a
shocking.
I think you need both. I think that's the whole
Right.
point, right? You
Right.
can't
It's not,
what good is a changed world if no one's there to inhabit it?
and I think this goes back to kind of what we're talking about, where there's no shame in that. There's no shame
Yeah.
in bringing joy to people. A
Yeah.
lot of times I think there's like people look down on fandom because it's like, what's the point? What are you doing for the world? It's like, how about like joy?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Oh, and
so needed.
I think there's the flip side of it, which I struggled with a lot when I went to film school because I I love big genre stuff. I love Disney movies. I love Marvel movies. I did my graduating thesis on Marvel. Like I love big popcorn movies. I love little indie things as well and I love I think you can like both, which sometimes seems like it's a very confusing for people. Like they feel you either have to be an artist or you have to enjoy big popcorn, big tentpole movies. Um, and when I went to film school, I remember just feeling so out of place because every time I wanted to talk about or even just go see, I saw all of the Marvel movies that came out while I was in college by myself. Because people were just like, those aren't real movies. They're not real films. Um, and I actually I actually knew someone who left film school and said, I have to go do something that matters. Like I have to do something that's actually going to change things for people. And I ultimately remember just feeling so overwhelmed and upset by it because to me, movies like movies like Iron Man, movies like Disney movies, I mean, Marvel is under Disney now and all of that, but those big tentpole movies that have this huge fandom attached to them, those were the things that made me feel okay growing up. Those were the things that got me through the harder part of my life, and I think there's something far more or I suppose you can say they're both valuable, I guess. Not one's more valuable than the other. But for me, yeah, watching a beautiful independent film that really has something to say and is really thoughtful, is great. But growing up, when I was, 16, 17, and really struggling with who I was as a person, what I needed was to watch a big movie and sit there and obsess over it on the internet with people. I needed that escape and I needed that joy. And I think people really don't value that in the same way. They feel like it doesn't put something into the world when I think it ultimately is potentially one of the most important things you can do. So
Oh my
that's
gosh.
just a tangent, but
Yeah, no, that and to feel like you belong, to feel seen,
yeah.
to you're right. That is more valuable. I think it's I'll say it. I think it's more valuable than like a smart indie. Yeah, because it's not just it's a feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's easy to, to kinda shit on Disney World and shit on that feeling of just feeling like you belong, but how wonderful to be able to have that moment of, "Here's something horrible that I had to deal with," and, like, to lose your agency of running and to break your hip and then to be told you'll never be able to do it again, but to be able to do it again in a place that makes you feel like anything is possible, I think is really just wonderful.
Yes. Oh my gosh. This is like a therapy session for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this has been really lovely, and so I think I might ask you our final question that I ask everybody, but I'll ask it to you twice. If you had never read Calvin and Hobbes, what do you think would be different about you today?
I think I wouldn't have had the blueprint for imagination that Calvin and Hobbes gave me, where it really, that book was a guide to your imagination, where I wouldn't have been as creative in my play. I wouldn't have been as creative in my writing. I just think watching his imagination made me say, oh, I can have that imagination too. And I don't know if I saw that in anyone else, so
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have a good imagination. And my imagination is so important to me right now and my whole life and everything I've done.
Oh, great one. And now we get to do a double whammy. If you had never watched a Disney movie or been to Disney World, what would be different about who you are today?
Oh my God. I don't think I would be, my entire being would be different. I wouldn't
Yeah.
be optimistic about life as I am. I wouldn't, I wouldn't be as close with my mother. I wouldn't have hope. I wouldn't be excited about everything. Disney makes me excited on a daily basis. When I was emailing you, I have a t-shirt that says, mermaid hair, don't care. And it's so stupid. It makes me so happy. I put it out the night before and I think I'm wearing my mermaid hair, don't care t-shirt tomorrow. Like it brings
Oh.
me joy on a daily basis. I think I would be a less joyful person, which would make me not as kind to others, not as good at my work. Like I don't even know.
Well, I think that's a perfect answer. So, I love that. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I really had a lovely time talking with you about everything.
I had a blast and I know that this episode is over, but I want to talk to you more later because this was fun.
So thank you again to Lauren for joining us this week. We'll be back next Wednesday with a brand new guest, and until then, make sure you sign up for our newsletter, which you can access on our website at tandonproductions.com and just click our show art and sign up there. Or you can also find me on Twitter, and my newsletter's right there at Marissa Kumari, and I'll see you next Wednesday.